Welcome to the Bladtcast, our annual Oscars post show this year called Christians Everywhere All at Once. Very excited to be joined as I have for at least the last 5 or 6 years. I should go back and check by Christian Toto of Hollywood and Toto. Christian, thanks for joining me today.
You make me watch this show every year, and yet I still converse with you. I'm still friends with you. I don't really understand that, but here we are.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I will talk about let's talk about the show first.
Yeah.
I think last year we really wanted to get to the slap, and the only real slap was for the audience. And I believe 3 hours and 43 minutes. And look, you live in Mountain Time, I live in Pacific Time. It's not as brutal for us.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's great, but it's not midnight when the show's over. It's like you're still like, okay, I wasn't going to be in bed yet anyway. But people on the East Coast staying up to watch this show, it's pretty brutal. But overall thoughts on the broadcast? I'll let you go first, sir.
It wasn't terrible. It's way too long. Nothing should be three.
I'm going to interject. I agree with both of those points. Not terrible. Definitely too long. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think they used to attempt to make it shorter. They don't even try anymore. That's out the window. There's no effort. There's no, Jimmy Kimmel's going to joke about it the whole night. It's just the way things are. Accept it or not. That's fine. I thought there were some wonderful speeches. I thought that Jimmy Kimmel was far more easygoing and charming than I expected. He wasn't Billy Crystal-esque, but he was Billy Crystal light. I think a lot of the winners we knew, but that's kind of just the way it works now. If you've got 16 award shows and someone wins like 14 or 15 of the 16, gee, what's going to win best, whatever, so that's pretty obvious. And it just felt a little bit more like what I was used to when I was growing up, where it was celebratory. It wasn't, a lot of lectures and hand wringing. There seemed to be people who had genuine joy to win, to be nominated, to be part of this whole process. And I appreciated that. It made it more tolerable. But at the end of the day, it is still crazy long. It is not funny enough or entertaining enough to kind of work as a show. You're going to have the gravitas of awards, and you have to really love movies to kind of buy into it. So that's my just sort of snapshot.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that you referred to Jimmy Kimmel as Billy Crystal Light, because it did make me think of the powdered diet drink Crystal Light. So basically he is ground up Billy Crystal. You add some water. It doesn't taste like the way grandma used to make it, but it's all right. I agree. And I was very conscious of this. By my count, there were 3 political related jokes from Jimmy Kimmel. I'm not going to talk about it in the speeches. And 2 of them came after hour 3.
Way late,
when he was in, when he was talking about, look at Steven Spielberg and Seth Rogen, they're like Joe and Hunter Biden. And look, that's a political joke, but it's against the sitting president. So I'm like, you know what? That's a funny line. Let's, nobody dwelled on it. The people didn't boo when he said that. That was a good sign. And then later there was a George Santos joke. I'm like, that's about the guy lying. That's not even really a political joke. That's like a celebrity joke. And then there's one comment about January 6th footage. And I'm like, you know what? If we get to hour 3 and that's the only thing we get, I don't know. I think we should consider that a win. I know that it's something that your site, Hollywood and Toto, being right of center, you always highlight those sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
So this probably got a failing grade for running time, but that content for a host, I feel like, it must have been much more digestible for everyone, like Crystal Light.
Yeah. Right from the jump, Jimmy Kimmel made me feel at ease, which is exactly what you want the host to do, to be light, to be charming, to be inviting, not to be kind of throwing bombs here and there. And I think he actually had some tough but fair jokes against the Oscars themselves. Sure. Brought it on themselves because they did nothing with the slap. He said something like, if you do that today, you'll get handed an Oscar and be hugged by strangers. I mean, that's actually pretty good humor, because it really is eviscerating what happened last year. And you had to address it. And I think he just did it. It was compact and he moved on, which is exactly the right way. So, one thing I will say about Jimmy Kimmel's monologue, it was funny. It was clever. It was charming. It wasn't great, but it was fine.
Yeah.
He poked fun at Tom Cruise, and they specifically in an interview asked him if he was going to go there. and he kind of sort of indicated he wouldn't. So I thought that was a little odd as well. I mean, the Scientology jokes about Tom Cruise, it's like, why don't you just call Bill Clinton horny? I mean, how much more stale can a joke be at this point? He doesn't
But
talk about it anymore.
I'm not gonna lie. I'd never heard L. Ron Hubba Hubba before, and I'm like, you know what? It's stupid, but I kind of liked it. You know, it's like one of those. You're like, oh, that's such a dumb joke, but I didn't think of it, so I'm gonna allow it. I agree. It's kind of like you know, even before Billy Crystal and Whoopi would sort of alternate. You know, it's like Johnny Carson hosting. It's very like, oh yeah, this is somebody who's comfortable in the job. It's the third time he'd done it now.
Mhm.
The last time he hosted it couldn't have gone worse, but that wasn't his fault. You know, they gave out the wrong Best Picture. Oops. So, you know, he weathered that reasonably well. And so, yeah, I think it was fine that he was back. I think that you and I were a little critical last year of the three hosts for a variety of reasons, but I think multiple hosts, they've done this for the Emmys, they've done this for other shows. Yeah, and I'm not talking about Amy Poehler and Tina Fey, whether you like them or not, they work well together. But when you just pick three people and put them on stage, that doesn't always work. Having one host, I think worked really well. And he was in it with us. He was like, yeah, this is a long night. I know, you know, it's so
if you had Steve Martin and Martin Short, that would work because they've been working together for years, if not decades, and they've got the rapport like Poehler and Fey do. But yeah, just freaking, let's pick an actress and a comedian and another comedian who had wildly different styles. We'll shove them together and then give them mediocre jokes and just see how that works. Well, it was terrible.
Yeah, and it wasn't too heavy on shtick. You know, there was the Q&A from regular people, and you know, he was able to get in some digs at not Ben Affleck, at Matt Damon. So it's like, all right, that's his running joke. It's fine. It's not like Letterman trying to do stupid human tricks on the Oscars, you know?
Yeah. And even
by the way,
Elizabeth Banks with the Cocaine Bear, it was brief, it was light, it was topical because the movie's fairly new. And, you know, you kind of forget, I'm not sold on her as a director. She's a very funny comic actress, and she handled it beautifully too.
Yeah, despite the fact that, as she pointed out, she'd lost her voice, and that'll you know, pull behind the curtain that when they're actually saying the nominees, clearly that's recorded earlier because all of a sudden her voice was fine. Checking in from across the pond, Craig Robinson. Haven't heard much, so looking forward to our recap. Yes, we're the place to go. You know, yeah, I mean, that would have been the middle of the night in the UK. So Craig, you did yourself a favor. Christian and I will always watch it so that you don't have to. In general, I thought that the show, again, apart from the running time, I thought the most interesting thing was there were more rock musicians on the Oscars than there were in the Grammys, because you had Lenny Kravitz, which I thought that he did a really nice, you know, the In Memoriam can kind of go off the rails when you do something non-traditional, but I thought that he did a great job. And David Byrne performed his nominated song. So it's two people that have had, like, you know, rock songs, and David Byrne's a little bit more new wave, new whatever, but I was just like, oh yeah, so that was fine. And I thought that the songs were all, look, those are the songs that were nominated. The Rihanna song was it was much smaller than what she did at the Super Bowl. Lady Gaga, so I'm like, yeah, that's all right. That's that, you get people to tune in with names like that. And
sure.
Just they happen to have been nominated. And I don't know. I didn't see RRR, but I was like, yeah, that should have won. You know, I just from their performance on
real
the show.
Boisterous, full of energy movie. And by the way, I was a little angry at David Byrne because his suit fit. I just thought that was inappropriate. But
he should always have the giant suit. Yeah, he should have no suits that actually fit him. It's an interesting thing that happens when you have corporate overlords, and in the case of ABC, it's Disney. And I mean, just like, let's set up this infomercial for the Little Mermaid movie, which I think that they know that there's some trouble in the waters, pun intended, for that movie. And, you know, look, I mean, first of all, I don't know why they made any of these live action remakes. You know, they vary wildly in quality.
But they
the
make
only
so
one
much
I
coin,
saw
though,
for
honestly.
the Beauty and the Beast one, I remember being okay, but then the rest of them, I'm like, I don't want to see Will Smith as the genie, even before he hit Chris Rock, you know. But yeah, it was just so, like, awkward and forced. And then it's like, and then we get like, let's celebrate Warner Brothers and show all the movies they have coming out. I'm like, is that is that like product placement? I mean, that had to be that. Or was it like, oh, the Disney shill won't look as bad as if we also do a Warner Brothers show? If I'm Fox and Sony, I'm like, hey, can we shill too? I guess Fox can't because they're part of Disney, but Sony should have been their Paramount. What did you think about those moments, Christian?
I haven't given them enough grief on social media. It's one thing to have Melissa McCarthy and Halle Berry. Am I getting her name right? The young actress who's the star.
Well, that's not Halle Berry.
But no, but their name is very similar.
It's very similar. Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, so forgive my ignorance on these.
But the actress who plays Ariel in the movie,
right?
Sure.
To have them on stage is a little cringe because you know that's what Saturday Night Live is for. When Woody Harrelson pops up and says, "Hey, I'm in a new movie called Champions," like that's the routine. But the Oscars are supposed to be better than that. It's supposed to be more regal, classier. So to have those two on stage was like, and then they put the trailer on. I'm like, oh my gosh.
If they had presented an award and the announcer had said from the upcoming movie, The Little Mermaid, okay, that's fine. No problem. But it's like, here's a commercial. Let's watch this. And
before the commercial, here's a commercial.
Yeah. And then, you get Morgan Freeman and Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie. I literally couldn't think of her name for a second. You get them out there and I'm like, okay, you're talking about the show running long. And I'm glad that Jimmy Kimmel addressed it, by the way. I was going to say this earlier. That's like, look, you said you wanted all the awards in. They're all in. So now sit through it and watch it. But if you are trying to cut time, I don't know, showing whole trailers and a montage of 100 years of Warner Brothers, but let's focus on the movies that are coming out over the next 6 months.
Well, that's the arrogance of the whole night is that you and I, we're not professional editors. We can look at it and go, okay, that's gone, shorter, gone. And now you got like a 3-hour show, which is not good, but it's better than 3 hours or whatever it was. And, like let's go visit the Academy Museum, which couldn't have less razzle or dazzle in that segment, was ridiculous. Yeah. And then when Kimmel came out and did like a Q&A with a couple of people, marginal laughs. I mean, laughs. If you've got to kind of maybe if you need filler, that's okay. It wasn't terrible, but by golly, you got a 3+ hour show. You got to trim every ounce of fat, and that was just chock full of fat.
And by the way, last year Wanda Sykes went to the Academy Museum, so they've already sold that to us. And I've gone to the Academy Museum. I went for my birthday back in February. It's great. I actually really like it. Yeah. I think that people when they're in LA should go. Yeah. However, you can mention, oh, and by the way, we have a museum. Now the nominee for film editing, So, or it could even be like, here's a QR code for, watch the clip of Wanda Sykes going last year. Just go ahead and watch it again. So those, and I don't think that the people who put on the Oscars show decided we want to show the Little Mermaid trailer. That was like, you're going to make time for the Little Mermaid trailer. Yeah. So that's a Bob Iger thing. I'm not going to hold the producers to it. Certainly not Jimmy Kimmel's fault, even though Disney signs his checks, I guess, but I was all right with that. And I agree there was limited payoff with Cocaine Bear. Although I did like at the end when he gave Jimmy a high five and, people were probably not awake anymore, but the tote board that said Oscars since an incident, and he put up the 1. So
not bad.
I think in general, he did a good job. I don't see much of Jimmy Kimmel's show. Usually it's just that every year the videos of parents telling their kids that they took away all their Halloween candy, so it's usually that's when I see him, but I thought he did a good job. And when somebody does a bad job, I'll make sure to point out, boy, did they do a bad job. So I really have no complaints for the job he did,
I think one thing I want to say before I forget, because I think it's kind of important is subjective here, but it amazes me that they didn't get Tom Cruise as part of that ceremony presenting anything, which leads me to 2 questions. Did they even ask? And if they asked him, did he turn it down? Like, I really want to know that, because this was the year to get Tom Cruise on that stage, being Tom Cruise, saying something uplifting, just as he wasn't going to win anything. Okay, that's fine. You got to get him on that stage. After the year he's had, after how he's helped the theaters, after how he's been such a gracious ambassador to Hollywood, to movies, to going to the cinema, how do you not have him part of that night? And if he says, I'm busy, I'm shooting X, you figure out a way to get him there. because when you
Right,
want to get there,
exactly.
you
And
get there. So
yeah, I'm
well,
trying to figure out how to not burn up on reentry doing an actual stunt coming
yeah.
in from outer space for Mission Impossible 8. Okay, that's a legit reason. But yeah, I would hope that they asked, and it could be, Kimmel may alluded to it, that James Cameron wasn't there because he wasn't nominated for Best Director.
Yes.
So maybe it could be as simple as not even a nomination for Best Actor, but
Yeah.
I agree. It really would have made sense to have him there. And if he was on set filming something else, and our pal David Weiss, Salmon himself in the chat, Tom Cruise is probably tired of Scientology and short jokes. Yeah, but at this point, when you're Tom Cruise, you get to kind of, I don't know. It's like, I'm going to be on the Oscars, and then the people who run the Oscars are like, yeah, let's just meet the demands that he wants. Also, with this comment, David Weiss, the Oscars were so white they made Friends look like Good Times. You're not entirely wrong. I think that it was, I think that there were some cheers for when Jimmy Kimmel mentioned Till, and I forget what the Viola Davis movie is called, but so there's
King.
like, hey, there's movies that weren't nominated that a lot of people think they should have nominated, and that didn't even feel preachy. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Why don't you do that every year? Mention a couple of movies that, like, I can't believe this didn't get nominated. So that's the broadcast itself, and I think you're right that there weren't a ton of surprises. I just didn't think that the movie with the title Everything Everywhere All at Once was describing all of the awards they were nominated for, that they were going to win Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I liked the movie. I thought it was well done. I think that's one of those ones where I love the performances more than the movie itself. I definitely saw it late. I think if I had seen it when it was first out, I could have gotten caught up in because when somebody's like, oh my God, this is amazing, odds are it's already not going to be amazing when you sit down to see it. What did you think of the movie before we talk about the awards?
I caught it late too, and I'm not in love with the movie. It took me a couple times to get through it, honestly. So I did love the performances. I mean, part of me thinks it's a wildly original movie that's unlike anything we've seen before. At a time where Hollywood is obsessed with remakes and sequels and reboots, give it all the Oscars. I mean, we gotta celebrate something here and some creativity. So from that perspective, I don't care. It's not my first or second choice, but it doesn't rub me the wrong way for sure. But I feel like these filmmakers are going to fall on their face the next time, and that sounds like a mean thing to say, but I don't know. It's such a weird and tough act to follow, for starters. And I hope they knock it out of the park, with their next project. But I don't know. It just seems like a really a singular event.
Yeah, and I feel like it's one of those situations where their third movie will probably be really good, but the second movie they're gonna get a little bit too much creative control. People aren't gonna want to tell them no. Their movie's gonna be like 2 hours and 54 minutes, and they'll be like, great, we'll just put it in theaters. And I'm very interested. Like if that comes out of their brains, let's see what's next. I'm all for that. But I agree with you. Rewarding an original film idea that's not an adapted property, it's not a sequel, a remake, anything like that. I think there's something to be said for that. But it's hard to not be happy for literally everyone in the cast who won. I mean, Michelle Yeoh is great, and I was talking to my wife after as we were watching it, and I was like, there's an executive at Paramount who, before he even went to bed, he's yelled at everybody who works for him to say, how in the hell has the Star Trek spinoff starring Michelle Yeoh that they've been working on for 3 years, I'm not exaggerating, how is that not ready to go? How are we not able to tweet out a trailer for that show? I mean, I knew someone who worked on an early version of it. They scrapped the idea, but it's like, this is the time. She's a great character on that show. You'll just have to take my word for it. But I'm very interested in seeing more of her, and they're just like, drop the ball on getting that. But very excited for, what she said. Obviously, for people who know, my wife's Chinese American, so her speech, and I have to stop calling him Short Round now that he's an Oscar winner. Ki Hui Kwan. And I don't even think I said it right, but I'm trying.
I think you got close. I've been toiling in my head like for hours now.
Ki Kwan, I think. What, both of those speeches, I thought were great. And also, I don't know that Jamie Lee Curtis deserved it for that role, but she's hung around for so long. I think having to be in that last Halloween trilogy, I think she deserves an award for that, for being in all three of those movies,
for being a trooper.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like she put in enough hours. It's like time served, So it's like, yes. But again, her speech and cut away to Christopher Guest all teary-eyed. Those are great moments. That is why, for people who do watch this show, that's kind of what you want. The people
Not only
that
she gave a shout out to genre films.
Yeah,
I mean, how wonderful was that? Because Oscars don't go near genre films, and a ton of people love them. And she was really, her early career was all about that kind of work, not just Halloween, but she did others as well. I just thought it was such a sweet sentiment. And again, I feel like between what Kimmel said in the beginning and then Ke Huy Quan, his speech, which would happen pretty early, really set a tone of gratitude and a sweetness to the whole affair. I mean, it really kind of carried forth, And I imagine if you're first or second person who wins and you make this sort of barn burner speech, maybe the night goes in a different direction.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And a few years ago, there was some just absolute asshole director who demanded more time. I think what I'm talking. I don't even remember who he was or what movie it was. It was just, and it was like I just felt icky the rest of the night, because it was, it was like, I've got more to say, and I was like, yeah, but you're out of time, idiot. No one knows who you are, so shut up.
And you're not Brad Pitt, okay? Sorry.
Yeah, right, exactly. And by the way, that was something I was going to say is, none of these speeches got played off. There were definitely people who tried to be the second one to talk for some of the lesser awards, and the mic got cut. That's what happens. Yeah, they tell you to designate somebody. But the fact that both Michelle Yeoh and Ke Huy Quan are able to really, have this sort of impassioned story. They both have great stories, I think.
Yeah.
Very, very American stories, coming from other countries. And I don't know, I think it was all worthwhile to see Short Round run up to Indiana Jones and give him a big hug at the end. I mean, I think that's really what I was still watching for.
Exactly. Those are the magic moments, but it would have been fun to see them get danced off. I thought that was a really funny idea.
Yeah, I was wondering if they were really going to do it, but yeah, is the woman accepting for women talking, if she'd gone an extra minute, was she going to get danced off? Probably not, by the way. But
so I know you're the host, but I do have a question for you before I forget.
Please.
The tone, Jimmy Kimmel not getting political at all in the beginning, was that a plan, either for him specifically or the night in general? Was there some sort of elbow tug, some sort of unwritten message, some sort of meeting saying, guys and gals, please, let's just focus on the movies, the entertainment, the gratitude, whatever. Let's try not to go there. And if you want to go there, go ahead. We're not going to stop you. But do you think anything like that was either said or implied?
I think with the trend for viewership for this show, I think that they're like, let's try to not alienate, half the people. I think if Trump was still president, they wouldn't have been able to stay away from it. We don't need to get into politics of that, but I think,
I agree.
It very simply, there would have been one material that they want to use, but then statements that they wanted to make. They like, or I don't even know that they like the guy who's president. They like who isn't president right now. So, it's almost like it's not the issue that it was, even last year we didn't have that. But I think you're right, though. I think that it was conscious. And if, I think if there was something in particular that, that Jimmy Kimmel felt passionate about, because, I know that he's spoken out about healthcare because his son was born with a defect and they rushed him to Children's Hospital where here in Los Angeles, where my daughter goes every week for speech therapy. It's a great facility. So I can understand if he had a personal, if he felt like he wanted to take a moment and talk about healthcare, as dreadful as that would have been. That's an issue that I know is important to him, and he has a good reason, because it involved his kid. But yeah, and honestly, we didn't have the preachiest speeches. I mean, I there wasn't a lot. It was a lot of hey, there should be more women nominated. All right, a woman certainly is absolutely within her rights to say that, but it wasn't even. I don't know. I didn't feel preached to at any point. I just felt bored.
What an improvement! I was so happy just to be bored by the Oscars.
Yeah, right, exactly. Farad Muhammad in the chat. Previous Oscar telecasts make jokes about getting played off differently. I think Tom Cruise was tasered or knocked out in a previous year. Something like that does sound familiar. Did I say Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks? He said Tom Hanks. We've got Cruise on the brain. And by the way, let's be honest. I mean, what did Top Gun Maverick win for? Sound editing, I think, right? Yeah. It's kind of what you expect. I mean, it won kind of what I thought. I was surprised of the shutouts for Fabelmans and Elvis. To be fair, I didn't see either of those. But I thought Elvis, there's something, I mean, it didn't even win costume. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have you saw both of those? Or
The Fabelmans is a fine movie. To me, it does not deserve any Oscars. It just doesn't. I mean, the costume design was perfect. I mean, it's what Hollywood does with a big budget, but it's not Steven Spielberg's best movie. It's not memorable. Right. The performances were all solid, but it doesn't really jump out at you. You take Steven Spielberg's name away from this, it's a good movie, and I don't think it deserves it. And I thought Elvis, Austin Butler, he could have won Best Actor. He was phenomenal. Okay. And so I think he had a legit shot. I know that Brendan Fraser was wonderful too, so I had no qualms there. But I thought as a movie that Elvis really didn't give me much, if not any, insight into who Elvis was. I mean, I didn't even get a full sense of who Elvis and the manager, Colonel Parker was, and that was Tom Hanks's character. It just made me feel empty. Now, I know Baz Luhrmann, he's all about the spectacle, but if you're going to make a great movie, you got to have something there. And I didn't think there was much there. It just was entertaining in a very glossy way. But again, Butler was stupendous.
Yeah, no. And I think that that might be talking about lightning only striking once. He may not get nominated again. We'll have to see what happens. Farad Muhammad, again, The Fabelmans is quite literally a Steven Spielberg film. It's funny because I was thinking, the way I think about it like Super 8. I know that's a J.J. Abrams film, but I'm like, I've seen this movie already. And it's like, I was saying earlier, it's like American Graffiti, just with less cars driving around.
It's a J.J. Spielberg film.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's so, but I don't have any doubt in my mind about the level of quality of it. I think it probably meets the Steven Spielberg standard.
Yeah.
It's hard to get excited about. I think, if it had won, I'd feel like, all right, that's one of the movies I want to see. Banshees of Inisherin, that was the one movie that I kept meaning to try to get to. I even found out that it was on HBO Max, so I really have no excuse for not watching it closer to the release date, except for life getting in the way. But I don't know that didn't win anything, did it?
Nothing.
Yeah,
it's a very good film. I was going to use one of the curses in it because I don't know if it's actually a curse or they have a certain spin on the F word, which I found very endearing, and they use it a lot. But I don't know what your standards are, so I want to keep this.
Oh no, we're fine. We we definitely spend plenty of time in the gutter, so that's fine if you want to.
Nice.
But so I mean, and those are movies that I think there was expectation for. Brendan Fraser is the other one and I've really my whole life been calling him Brendan Fraser. But then last night, everybody's saying Brendan Fraser. I'm like, I guess it's right because he didn't correct them.
Yeah.
But I thought was a cute moment to point out at the beginning of the 2 of the 3 stars from Encino Man, both nominated. And he just seems like a really likable guy. His career didn't really go the way that people expected it to, I think, I mean, he was an action star for a moment, comedic action star, I guess. Like, he could have had Paul Rudd's career to some extent, maybe, but it's not the way it panned out. But I think that people were legitimately happy for him, but also not surprised because that's what you were talking about before, right? That he had won pretty much everything leading up to this, right?
Yeah, and it's a legitimate. I didn't love the movie; I had some issues with it, but it's a legit great performance. It just he's all in. You just forget who he is for sure. The latex and the heavy suit, the makeup was wonderful. but it's what he does with it, which is pretty magical. So I have no problem.
Right.
I think that Hollywood, I would say with diversity issues, that's another layer of, oh, he or she could win because of that. But for years, it's often been they're a nice guy or gal. It's their turn. They seem very gracious off screen. So I think like maybe the Sandra Bullocks of the world, when they win, maybe not the most scintillating performance that you've ever seen, but all those different sort of sub factors kind of add together. And I think maybe that helped Brendan Fraser, but it's still a great performance. So I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I think that it's not like the Golden Globes where what was that that it was a Johnny Depp Angelina Jolie movie, I think, called The Mexican. That
The Tourist,
clearly,
wasn't it?
Yeah, The Tourist. Yeah. The movie that only won because clearly they had spent a lot of money. I mean, it's not one of those. It's one of those where people are like, oh yeah, no, this was good.
Yeah.
And they pointed out a lot of first-time nominees, and I don't know. I think that that sort of helped the overall feeling. You could be happy for people,
Yeah.
like what you said. I mean, the number of times we saw the guys, the Daniels from Everything Everywhere all at once. And, I mean, they had a lot to say, but they had a lot of opportunities to say it. And, it's hard to not be excited for people who are excited to be there.
I mean,
and win.
they struck me as film geeks who maybe were a little ostracized in their younger days. I can't relate, but that's
it
happens to someone.
No.
So,
Right.
How could you not feel joy? And again, they didn't turn. The one guy had a quibble, a statement we could go into, but we could easily forget it. But the joy they felt, they weren't ready to kind of make a statement about climate change. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm at the pinnacle of my career. I can't imagine it happened to me. I'm so grateful. I'm so happy. A lot of my friends are here who are with me in that journey. That's what you want the Oscars to be. That's what it should be. Listen, they're all rich. I get it. They're famous. They're beautiful. And you could throw in some resentment at that. Fine. But, we watch it because we want to see that joy. That, who can't relate to that on some level? We've all had these little minor triumphs, and they just get shiny gold awards when they do.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I think that in general, there were definitely a couple of clunky presentations. I mean, starting out the show with The Rock and Emily Blunt, it was like, yeah, that's the Jungle Cruise reunion that we all wanted. I was like, thank God. So sequel, what's going on, Dwayne?
Don't tease us, man. Give it.
And then just for me personally, Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh, I think that they should have to use their American accents. It throws me off. I was just like, no, that's not what they're supposed to sound like.
I agree.
It's like, it's the reverse Hugh Laurie. I couldn't watch House because his American accent annoyed me so much. Benedict Cumberbatch, say what you want about Doctor Strange. He should be using his British accent in that movie. There's no reason that he has to be from New York. He could be British. It would be fine. He would sound normal if you would only let Benedict Cumberbatch be British.
I think I did a phone with Alfred Molina years ago. I'm like, why is this guy in a British accent? Stop it.
Is he putting me on? Is he doing a character? Yeah. I liked it was for a film called Irish Goodbye, singing the guy happy birthday. That just adds to like the overall feel, the joy. And I think that song's in public domain now. 20 years ago, there would have been, a check to cash and somebody would have been mad. But
it is show business.
Yeah. And, when you have the in memoriam, we talked about the job that Lenny Kravitz did earlier. I thought he did it. This song was great. I guess what I read this morning is they forgot Paul Sorvino, and Mira Sorvino pointed that out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember they had him on the Emmys. But so I guess that must be why they're like, he got one. And then the joke about Robert Blake, I was just like, you know what? He may or may not have shot his wife. I'm going to feel okay about it. I have a friend who, by the way, is convinced that he didn't. But I'm like, Robert Blake's alibi was, I couldn't have shot my wife because at that point I was going out to the car to get my gun. So I could not have possibly shot my wife. So I don't know. I was all right. With that.
Here's the bigger issue. Well, they forgot Anne Heche, which is just terrible. But also, I think her name is Charlby Dean. I hope I have that right. Forgive me if I have it wrong. She was the lovely actress in Triangle of Sadness. She's a South African. I think she may have been a model. And she was 32 years old. She died last year. The star of an Oscar-nominated movie for Best Picture died last year and they forgot her.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean, that seems like a very, very easy, Googleable thing. Like, oh, let's check about everybody
Yeah.
in all the movies. By the way, just to circle back, my brother is in the chat and he says, I thought Doctor Strange was from Brooklyn. I mean, in the comics he is, but it'd be all right if he was from Kensington on Kent or something. They all have everywhere of there has a name like that. I'm sure that Craig Robinson across the pond, he knows what I'm talking about. He's from Robinson on Kent, if I had to guess. But so was there a performance? I mean, again, not really surprises. Was there one where you're like, this is the thing that really should have won? Because I didn't see enough stuff. I was smart enough that the one movie I saw is the one that won everything,
I don't think we're in an age of great movies, but I kind of think we're in an age of great performances. I can make a lot of arguments for a lot of different actors. Kerry Condon was in The Banshees of Inisherin. She was spectacular. Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell, the two leads, amazing. Just all the categories. I actually caught To Leslie, which was sort of the big scandalous nomination for Andrea Riseborough. And I caught her on a plane recently. It's a very good movie and she's stunning in it. And if she had won, she would have deserved to win. So it's wildly subjective. Who knows why the winners are the winners. But I think across the board, they were just great performances. So I think in every category, you can make a good argument for anyone.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think there's the ones, the things that you just expect. Like I was saying, like Top Gun was never going to win, but you look, if it had, you'd be like, well, think about the way that movie made people feel when they saw it, and so I think that it's just sort of making sure that I'm not forgetting anything major. But again, it's like it's one of those ones we're talking about everything all at once. It covers so much of the conversation,
Right.
Just
say,
the
EAO. What's the acronym for the Everything Everywhere? I think you could use that in regular, when you want to say
I know
inclusive.
Yeah. So my brother chimes in. Everything That Breathes was robbed in Best Documentary. It lost to the Get the Russian Dissident Out of Jail vote. I could see that. That looked like a story. I don't know. Look, when you get to documentary, you always look. And when I used to, work in offices when there would be like Oscar pools, you'd always find out which one is like the Holocaust documentary, because odds are it's going to be very well done. It's going to be heartbreaking. It's going to win one because of the subject matter, but because the subject matter just makes for amazing storytelling, So, I felt like that was probably something that would. And Farad Muhammad wanted to point out one of the singers in Elvis also passed away. So Shanka,
that's right.
Dukra, who played Big Mama Thornton. And my brother, I get all my Oscar news from NPR. Well, that would explain it. Yeah, that's that would be on NPR. That was the only award that was awarded last night, was the Russian dissident. Which, by the way, the politics behind that, you're like, yeah, okay, this is going to be an anti-Russia crowd.
Absolutely. So if you win an award for abortion, I don't care what side of the argument you're on. You mentioned your thoughts on abortion. That's just that's an organic thing.
Yeah, exactly. So there's not a lot of movies that are nagging me that I feel like I need to see. Obviously, if something other than Avatar had won for visual effects, I would have been like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I had friends that wanted the Batman to be nominated for more, and I'm like, are you kidding? Like, I guess the cinematography was good, but it's like Christopher Nolan light, So I there's not a lot that I wanted, and honestly, the animation I'd only seen Puss in Boots, so well, no, I saw Turning Red as well. That's right, I forgot.
I will say Pinocchio, which one is it's wonderful. The story is good, not very good.
Right.
The animation is just wonderful. I've seen it multiple times. Just something about it. It's just arresting. And maybe it's just because it's real. It's not CGI. It's the stop motion. It's something. It's hard to describe, but it's lovely. It's just beautiful to watch, and the story is good enough for sure. And the vocal performances are solid. So, but boy, you should see it. It really is something to be.
No, that was one. It's one of those. A lot of times with the Oscars, I'm reminded of like, oh yeah, I was going to see that. The Pinocchio is one of those.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on All Quiet on the Western Front? That did win for cinematography. It's in German, right?
It won a lot. I mean, it looked like that actually could overwhelm Everything Everywhere. It's the one movie I haven't seen, the one major movie I haven't seen. It's on Netflix, no excuse. It just seemed punishing to me to watch. And I feel like this is my excuse as a film critic, and it's actually legitimate, but I've been in a different headspace since my wife had cancer a couple of years ago. She's okay now. But also that and the pandemic, when I have free time in my life, I go straight to B movies, horror movies, genre movies, junk I've seen from the 80s I want to relive. So I've been kind of off my game as a critic. I mean, I watch most of the films and I check things out, but I'm different now. It's even hard for me to describe.
Always glad to hear that your wife is doing well, by the way. I know Thanks. That you've mentioned that somewhat regularly. You know, you post about it. Sometimes I'll ask you privately. And so, yeah, that's always great to hear. But I agree that, here in Los Angeles, it took a lot longer for us to be able to get back to movie theaters than in other parts of the country. And so when I did, I wasn't rushing out to see All Quiet on the Western Front. You know, I know it wasn't out yet. That's not the point, but I agree with you. I have so much limited time. I'm always caught up on the latest season of Bluey on Disney Plus because I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. So, there's the stuff I'm up on because of the shows I host. I always keep up on the Marvel stuff, which there's a bit of a range in quality when it comes to that.
I haven't noticed. I think they've all been excellent.
No, well, look, if Kevin Feige's got an ear open, I think each one is better than the last, and so I just can't wait for the next thing. I'd be happy to shill like they did for the Little Mermaid, but it was an interesting point that Jimmy Kimmel made, is that there's something that movies can do that television can't. Television can't lose you $100 million. But there is something about the way that it's just easier to consume TV that really started with the pandemic, but it's a lot easier for me to keep up on Star Trek Picard, especially this year when it's actually a good season as opposed to last season, which
I've heard nothing but good things about the latest season.
Yeah.
And by the way, just to kind of defend myself anew, because I'm feeling very guilty. I guess the older I get, the more I'm reticent to watch the eat your vegetables movies, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Do your homework movies. Like another movie I did not see was Till. I think the subject matter is fascinating. It's a story that should be told. I can't rally myself to see it. It's so horrible. I mean, it's like
so the example that I always use is I never, and this is going back 20 years now, I never in my mind had a doubt that The Passion of the Christ was a good movie. I did not want to watch Jesus get beat up and bloody for 2 hours. I was just like, I get it. Yeah. There's things, it's not like, growing up going to Sunday school, I was like, boy, I'd love to see that on the big screen. That sounds amazing. You want to do a spin-off movie on King Herod, I'll be there for that. But so there's movies where I'm just like, I'm not even saying that I don't think it's good. It's just, I don't want to go there. It's like, how many people do you know that have seen Schindler's List multiple times? We all saw it and it was like, it's so well done.
Yeah.
I can't imagine living through the movie again. God forbid the people who had to live through what's on the screen.
Right.
There's movies that it's like, I just once. And then there's other movies where I'm like, I don't think it's for me.
Give me Shawshank again. It's on a loop.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. We definitely want something that ends, a little bit more upbeat, but I agree with you. Like, I didn't sit down to see Cocaine Bear because I'm like, this is going to be great. It's like, and honestly, my problem with Cocaine Bear, since, it's Oscars adjacent because he was on the show, it wasn't bad enough. You know what I mean? It was like,
I agree.
It was like somebody that I knew compared it to Snakes on a Plane. And I was like, that was more fun,
I thought Cocaine Bear, the first half hour, was the Cocaine Bear that I wanted. It was over the top. It was crazy. There was bloodshed. There was action. There was chaos. And then it became like a conventional, slightly boring movie. And I'm like, wait a minute. I came to see Cocaine Bear.
Yeah.
You gotta give me the full cocaine.
I did like the Cocaine Cubs, so that if they want to do a spinoff, they can have the Cocaine Cubs. But yeah, no, exactly. So it's, and I have a brand to maintain, so I'll always go and see. I'm seeing Shazam later this week. I saw Black Adam, and it was in the theater. And it's, but those are all like escape movies of varying quality. When I go to see something like Don't Worry, Darling, and I find it to just be atrocious. I was like angry tweeting while the credits were playing. I upset a couple people because I said people who liked it must be stupid. I'm not really backing down from that, by the way.
Okay, that's fair. I appreciate the
I feel the same way about Bohemian Rhapsody.
By the way, I think I may be the only person who liked Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. What was your take on it?
I liked it for the most part. I thought that the one thing that they did right was the runtime. It's just over 2 hours. They get right to the Quantumania. You know what I mean? It's like, let's not have the 40 minutes before they go into this. Basically, like there's a little bit, some cute stuff. Hey, remember Paul Rudd? You like him? So yeah, I did a few episodes of a few of my shows, but the Bladtcast specifically, I cobbled them together and had about 3 hours of review with different people. For it's like, if you really want to dive deep, you can go 2 episodes back from this one and find it. But it goes a long way because I do like Paul Rudd. I do like that those movies don't take themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
And because when they take themselves too seriously, it's like, but it's Ant-Man. So you have to know that that's the approach. That's why I like the first Shazam. Haven't seen the second one yet. The first Shazam, I like Zachary Levi. It was fun. He's a kid who turns into a grown-up. Great. Have that spirit. The DC movies usually haven't been fun. I think James Gunn is going to make them more fun because his series Peacemaker was one of my favorite things I watched last year. So I liked Ant-Man and the Wasp. I thought that the people who didn't like it, I was just like, I don't know if they saw the same movie I did.
Yeah, there was a lot of anger toward it too. I was like, wow, I could see not loving it. I didn't love it, but I thought there was a lot to enjoy there. I even like the vistas. I like the sort of the imagination that was behind that. And I think Jonathan Majors is just so interesting to watch. He's something I can't figure why he's so compelling on screen, but he is compelling on screen. He just is.
Yeah. No, yeah, and there was a nice moment with him and Michael B. Jordan presenting last night. I thought that was actually kind of fun. He's great, and I mean, Marvel's going to build their whole next phase around him as this character Kang and the various iterations of Kang, and I mean, they've literally picked the perfect actor, So I'm excited that we get to see more of him. Farad Muhammad with a great callback. It's too bad that Conan didn't interview Paul Rudd when Quantumania came out, because he would have loved another Mac and Me clip, because it's like 20 years now, Farad, right? That whenever Paul Rudd is on Conan in particular, I don't think it's any other show. I think it's just Conan. He always sets up a clip and then ends up being a clip of him in Mac and Me. It's like the same clip.
Wait, Paul Rudd was in Mac and Me?
Yes.
Was he like a little boy?
Yeah, I believe so. And it's like a running gag. And I think to the extent that Paul Rudd was once on Conan's podcast and he still played the clip from Mac and Me. He still set it up. I think he did it in another way. And I think that a lot of like those superhero movies are very personality driven, you know? And I think that's why people tend to like Tom Holland Spider-Man more than Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, because it was okay, so this is even crazier. Farad Muhammad, he wasn't in Mac and Me. It's just a random clip. I didn't even get the joke until now. I thought he was in it as a kid. I thought he had a small part in it. So thank you.
Any excuse to watch any piece of Mac and Me is fine.
Right, exactly. The wannabe ET that it was. Absolutely. Farad also pointed out Requiem for a Dream is another one of those really great never watching again films. Yeah, I think that we could all probably make those like top 10 lists of movies that you're not denying their quality, but you would never watch them again. It's like if my kids come around to wanting to see, a movie when they're older, I'll be like, yeah, all right, I'll see you in like 2.5 hours. That's all right.
I was just talking to my wife. I can't wait for my oldest son, he's 14 now, to watch The Graduate with me. But he's not ready for it yet. Like,
not at 14. I
mean, listen, he could process it. It's nothing too outrageous, but that
I don't
movie
think
is,
I don't think you appreciate that movie at 14. I
yeah,
think I was like 17, 18 by the time I saw it,
yeah.
you
You
know?
got to get some angst going, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. What so your oldest is 14. What are your kids responding to the most in terms of films? We could talk TV for a moment
Yeah.
or two. I'm just sort of interested because you're further down the road than I am. As I said, I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. So
I have a short answer. It's this, technically. So they have no interest in movies.
oh, interesting.
I
Okay.
drag them to a couple now and then.
Right.
My oldest son does love like Family Guy, and it's probably too young, but I've let him watch some South Park, and he
Oh,
really loves the irreverent humor. Like he's in this age where the dark humor really speaks to him, and I kind of have to counsel him and say, you got to make sure this is all internal, dude. You can't,
yeah,
you
you
can't
can't
do
get away
South
with
Park in
say
real
you
life,
you can't say this at school. You can't
None of
yeah, it's like watch the Chris Rock special and like he said,
yeah.
these are all jokes you can't tell at work tomorrow. you know. So, yeah, no, I agree and yeah, look, I was just excited that my son who's 7 last summer I finally got him to watch Star Wars because before that he felt like it was going to be too scary. He was too
Yeah.
old. But it's funny because his 6th birthday, I took him to see, we talked about it earlier. I took him to see Jungle Cruise because he loves maps and traveling and they were, on the Amazon River. So
Yeah.
like he was excited about that aspect of it. And I had an invite to the press screening, which happened to be on his birthday. So I was like, all right, let's go on your birthday at the Disney Theater, the El Capitan in Hollywood. It's kind of a fun thing.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm like, this movie is way scarier and also much, much worse than Star Wars. So when he was in like his summer camp, they were going to show him Star Wars on Friday. And I'm like, well, that is not the first time, the way that you're going to see it. I'm going to get you early on Tuesday. We're going to watch it. And we watched the 3 good ones, 4, 5,
Yeah.
and 6, the 3 best. And he wants to see more. He's like, when can we watch episode 7? I'm like, how about we watch The Mandalorian? Like in the timeline, that's what's next. That's
It's a
the
long
next
story, son.
yeah, it's like it's going to take a little while. And then but even he's like I was like, "Well, what do you think about episode 1?" He's like, oh, "I don't know. I don't." And I'm like, "Yeah, exactly. You don't know because probably none of your friends have talked about it." So, yeah, and my daughter, I think she likes like there's an animated preschool show called Spidey and His Amazing Friends on Disney Channel. So she likes yeah, so she likes stuff that's it's not not the one from like when I was a kid. There's Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. That was like my gateway drug. There's like a much preschool friendly.
Okay.
Like when you watch it, you'd think that like the Green Goblin is just a little bit of a troublemaker. He's just naughty occasionally. He's not really doing anything,
Oh, you
It's
Green
like,
Goblin, you stop.
yeah, like But so yeah, it's a lot of finding things like that. They do like the experience of going to the movies. Probably it's mostly the snacks, which that's fine. I get that.
By the way, this is kind of Oscar adjacent. The new Avatar movie is maybe a top 5 all time now? Is that where we are?
It is a top 5 all time. Yeah.
Now, my social life is minimal, but I am on social media a lot. I feel like here's a movie that is massive, one of the biggest movies of all time. And I never hear a single person talk about it, reference it, say they loved it, want to get the merch, want to buy it on Blu-ray. Like I feel like everyone saw it and no one cares about it. Is that accurate? Is that fair?
I think that is accurate. And then the interesting thing was, my son loves the aquarium and ocean, and we have tons of National Geographic books about that. So he was really intrigued by it.
Yeah.
And somehow he found out that it's 3 hours and 12 minutes. So I was going to take him because I was like, let's see it on the big screen. He's like, well, I didn't see the first one. And then he's just like, it's too long. And I'm like, you're not wrong. It's too long.
It is too long.
So maybe when it's on Disney Plus. So like I thought that he would be excited to see it. I mean, it's certainly better than Jungle Cruise. It's just not shorter. But I agree. I went and saw it, and I talked to people afterwards that I knew that I saw, and my friend I went with, and it was like, oh, this was great. But you're right. People who've seen it afterwards been like, oh yeah, it was good. But you're not invested in it in the same way, in
any way, almost. There's no sort of like when you meet friends at a party, you might talk about what you're streaming, what you're binging, the TV shows you love, maybe a movie now and then. Sadly, I wish that happened more often, but I just like he's made 2 movies. They're like the biggest movies of all time. and there's no what do you call it when the boat goes, the wake? There's no
Oh
wake.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoyed the latest one to a degree. I have no interest in the next one. I mean, I'll see it because it's my job, but it didn't like end in a way of thinking, oh gosh, I can't wait to see the next movie.
Right. No, I agree. I think I liked it more than the first one, but that's sort of marginal. I
Yeah.
think just visually the spectacle was amazing. That
Yeah.
wasn't a problem. But you're right. People aren't excited about it, even in the way I think it's not as good a movie. I'm sorry that the first one was not as good a movie, but it
Mhm.
was so new and unique. People talked more about that
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
way. And we're also what 12 years removed from the first one. I think that really ate into it a lot.
Yeah.
And we've got 3, 4 more sequels coming. So
I don't know.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Top Gun comes out and everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
Spider-Man No Way Home, everyone's talking about it. When Titanic came out, everyone, it was crying parties with teenage girls crying over the movie. Like it had an impact on the culture and you couldn't escape it. And I
Yeah.
love that about movies where you're talking about it, you're arguing about it, you're thinking about it, you're buying crap that's associated with it. And then these two movies come out, they blow out the doors of you could, they did as well as you can possibly imagine. And it's nothing.
Yeah. No, I agree.
It's a ride. It's a ride.
And and I think that's why, we talked earlier about Marvel. It's like that is like even when the movie isn't the best one that someone's seen, they're still excited because it's
Yeah.
like they're so invested, especially when they were building up to Avengers Endgame, which was kind of like the last moment where everybody was like, well, this is great. This built to that. And then
Mhm.
Spider-Man comes along, and that's great because it's a Spider-Man movie, and people tend to like those. But yeah, there's not people aren't invested in like I was saying before, they're not invested in Avatar, maybe at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, but so if your kids don't like to see movies, I can't imagine that you would have even tried to get them to see a 3-hour and 12-minute movie.
Not a chance.
Yeah,
Not a
right,
chance.
exactly. That's like more movie than they'll see in a calendar year,
That's right.
So
Dad, you got 92 minutes. Go.
right, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I think that look, I'm there's plenty to be excited about this year that's coming out, but most of it is, sort of the big budget popcorn movies,
Mhm.
and I think for people who are regulars of the Bladtcast, they know that something like a final, at least a final James Gunn Guardians of the Galaxy might have like a different caliber than some of the other releases.
Yep.
And the Flash movie, it's like it's got Michael Keaton in it, so it's going to have to be really bad for me to be like, that was terrible. So there's a lot of that stuff coming, and boy, does my daughter want to see that Barbie movie, by the way, because we live near the Warner Brothers lot. There's like just a big, and she knows the bee. That's what the poster is. It's the big bee from Barbie. She's like, Daddy, is there going to be a Barbie movie? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I should go see that with mommy. And I was like, yes, you should. So, is there anything that you can think of as we start to wind down here that you're like looking forward to, whether it's the months ahead or down the road, something that you're particularly excited about?
I think the Tom Cruise, the Mission Impossible series seems to get better,
Yeah.
more outrageous every time. He's on such a hot streak right now. I hope that continues. I really kind of fear the new Indiana Jones movie. I love Harrison Ford to death. He is my generation's movie star.
Sure.
He's turned 80. He's looking his age, and I know that sounds mean, but he's an action hero. He's Indiana Jones. I don't know how they can pull it off. And I saw the trailer. I wasn't overwhelmed, and I don't know what to say. I mean, I feel so. I root for all the movies. I mean, ultimately,
Yeah.
I want to have a great time, and we're all getting older, and I don't want to be mean about it, but it just seems like a really tough stunt to pull off, and
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
I think
I'm
if
worried.
the Crystal Skull one had been a better movie,
Yeah,
this
that
one-
helps.
This
That would
it's
help.
like this is kind of like the do-over. There's
Yeah.
no Shia LaBeouf in this,
But he
and
was
then
older in that movie, but he was still looked like Indiana Jones, and
Yeah,
it
I
didn't
agree.
bother me at all. So.
Yeah, no, it's I guess when it goes pretty quickly, and I don't know what Tenet was. I don't know what it was supposed to be. That thing was a mess, but still, because of the body of work, Christopher Nolan has Oppenheimer coming out over the summer.
Yep.
And I'm like, I look, I don't. Okay, so something like Cocaine Bear or Snakes on a Plane, I'm sitting in the seat, not necessarily expecting it to be great, but I'm always hoping to be entertained. I want everything to be great. I want Batman vs Superman to be good. I know I'm going to be there for 2 hours and 45 minutes. I'm not happy when it's not good. You know, I want everything to be good. So that's one that I'm very intrigued by, because you know that story and you're like, Christopher Nolan can tell, you know, his spin on that story could be great. So that's sort of like the one, you know, we'll see if next year when we do the show, if that's what we're talking about Oscar wise.
I hope so.
Or maybe Cocaine Bear 2. I'm not really sure. But anyway, Christian, the Oscars were so much less eventful than last year, but I think in a good way. But I appreciate you always taking the time to not only watch the show, but then talk to me about it afterwards.
My pleasure.
If people want to find your site, your podcast, please let everybody know where they can find all of that.
You know, I like to keep my opinions to myself mostly, but if you want to hear them, no. So my website is hollywoodintoto.com, and my podcast, which is rebooted, renewed, sequel, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's back. Comes out each week. It should be going to twice a week in the near future. That is the Hollywood in Toto podcast. I like to interview a lot of different kinds of artists, maybe people you haven't heard of before, others you certainly have, but also I really want to get people from across the aisle. I'm a right of center guy, but I really want to get some left-leaning critics and actors and celebrities and talent to talk and to have a debate and to be civil and to be cool with each other, and then just find out we maybe agree more than we disagree, or maybe vice versa. But that's going to be part of the template coming soon.
I think, I think that in general, in most of our lives, it's very easy to talk to people that, you know, I mean, if somebody's completely got a different outlook on life, that can be a little trickier.
Tricky, yeah.
You know, but you know, a lot of times it's like, all right, but you should be able to talk about a movie with something, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
So,
you know, it's you should be able to talk to, say, Oliver Stone about movies, you know, without having to get into how, you know, he's the only American who got the Russian vaccine because Putin's his buddy, you know. So, you know, it's like we don't need to talk about this. Let's talk about would you like a do-over on Wall Street 2? You know, stuff like that. Maybe don't ask him that. But I know
that's not your first question. Maybe your fifth.
No, you work up to that. That's like at the 60-minute mark where you're like, all right.
So, Mr. Stone, would you like a do-over on?
You know, is there going to be a third one? But I do always appreciate it. It's always fun to chat about these things with you, and I like I said, I always appreciate you making the time to do it. Everybody who tunes in to the podcast version of the Bladtcast, we'll have a couple of interviews with musicians this week. I talked to a musician named Ron Young from a band called Little Caesar. He had a fascinating book about his story, about a band that never quite really caught on. And then there'll also be an episode with Frank Hannon from the band Tesla, where we talked a lot about what they have coming up. And don't worry, next week will be our special on Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods. So make sure that you check that out. Is that one that you're going to go to a press screening of, Christian? Or
yeah, going this week.
Okay. Yeah. So by the time I see it, I'll probably know what you think of it, but cool. I'll think I'm seeing it Friday, you know, right in the middle of the day. It's a perfect St. Patrick's Day film, but in any case, so stay tuned. Please subscribe to the Bladtcast, Bladtcast, our YouTube channel, and wherever you find your podcasts. That's all the time we have for now. We'll see you next time on the Bladtcast.